he left me standing in silence, a widow at 52 with no map for the years ahead. The funeral still hung in the air, like a heavy scent white lilies that had begun to brown. Sympathy cards lined up like mute witnesses on the mantel, neighbors speaking in hushed tones when I passed by. Our Minneapolis house felt too bright, every clock tick like a reminder of the space he no longer filled. 2 weeks after we laid him to rest, I sat in a wood-paneled law office where the smell of leather and old paper clung to the air. Mr. Winters, Joshua's longtime attorney, looked almost apologetic as he sorted a final stack of documents. "There's one more item," he said, sliding a small brass-bound box across the desk. Inside lay an antique key attached to a maple leaf keychain and a sealed envelope in Joshua's exacting hand. I hesitated. Joshua's few, gentle requests during our 24 years of marriage had always been easy to grant. But one stood apart, spoken with uncharacteristic force. "Never go to the farm, Catherine. Promise me." I'd kept that promise, even when curiosity stirred late at night. Now he was gone, and the farm I'd been told not to approach had come back like a ghost. I unfolded the letter with careful fingers. "My dearest Cat, if you are reading this, it means I've left sooner than either of us expected. Forgive me for the secrets I carried. Maple Creek Farm is yours now. I bought it 3 years ago and rebuilt it with my own hands and plans. I release you from the promise never to go there. On the contrary, I ask you to visit. In the main house's study, you'll find a laptop. The password is the date we met, followed by your maiden name. There is more to tell, but it must unfold in that place. Trust what you will find. With all my love, Joshua." I read the letter twice, the words trembling in my hands. "A farm in Alberta?" I asked, my voice half a whisper. Mr. Winters nodded. "Your husband repurchased the family property, Maple Creek Farm. He kept everything in perfect legal order and paid taxes years ahead. There may, however, be complications. His brothers have already inquired about the land, especially since oil was discovered in that region." The mention of oil sent a cold shiver through me. Joshua had never cared about wealth. He was an engineer who measured success in completed bridges and quiet evenings at home. Yet he had bought a vast property in secret. I slipped the heavy key into my pocket, a strange resolve taking root. The next dawn found me alone on a highway that stretched like a silver ribbon toward Canada. Minnesota's late autumn sky blushed pink in my rear-view mirror, then deepened to a steel gray as I crossed into North Dakota. I drove through farmlands where harvested fields lay flat and silent under early frost. I imagined Joshua making this same journey in reverse, driving south to me, to the life we built, every mile another stitch binding us together, while something equally strong pulled him back north. Night fell as I reached the border. Customs officers barely glanced at my documents, and soon I was climbing through rolling prairie toward the foothills of Alberta. Every mile closer to Maple Creek felt like stepping deeper into Joshua's hidden heart. By late evening, I reached a small town where a single inn still had lights glowing. The clerk handed me a brass key with polite Canadian reserve. In my room, I laid Joshua's letter on the nightstand and tried to sleep. But questions crowded in. Why buy back a farm he'd fled as a young man? Why the secrecy? And what kind of family quarrel could reach from his childhood into our marriage? Morning brought pale sunlight and a thin crust of frost. After a quick breakfast, I set off again, guided by the GPS coordinates Mr. Winters had provided. The landscape changed subtly as I drove prairie, giving way to gentle hills brushed with gold and red. Around a bend, a set of wrought iron gates appeared, their arch spelling out Maple Creek Farm in graceful black letters. I pulled to a stop, heart pounding. The key Joshua left fit perfectly. The gates opened with a dignified creak, revealing a mile-long gravel drive that wound through maples aflame with October color. Horses grazed on distant hills, their coats flashing in the sunlight. I parked near the grand 2-story farmhouse, freshly painted white with deep green shutters. The porch stretched wide and welcoming, as if waiting for me. Still, a knot tightened in my stomach. I was trespassing in my own inheritance, stepping into a chapter of Joshua's life I had never read. Inside, the air carried a subtle scent of cedar and something sweeter hay, perhaps, or memories. The great room opened to soaring beams and a stone fireplace. Everywhere I looked, horses watched me. elegant paintings of Andalusians in mid-gallop, photographs of wild mustangs framed in simple black. Joshua had known my love for these creatures, yet claimed he never truly understood it. Now I saw he had understood perfectly. On a desk, by a tall window, rested a silver laptop. Across its closed lid lay a single red rose, petals impossibly fresh, as if cut that morning. My breath caught. Joshua's presence filled the room like a low, steady heartbeat. Before I could open the laptop, a sound broke the stillness. The low growl of an engine on gravel. I hurried to the window. A black SUV was coming up the drive, its dark shape jarring against the golden maples. 3 men stepped out tall, broad-shouldered, their profiles strikingly similar to Joshua's. My heart hammered. I didn't know their names yet, but I knew exactly who they were. I pressed my back to the cool wall, every nerve alert. The men conferred briefly, then the eldest rapped sharply on the front door. "Mrs. Mitchell, we know you're inside. We need to talk." I stayed silent, gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles whitened. Joshua had warned me in his letter that complications might arise, that his brothers might contest the will. Now they were here, flesh and blood, demanding entry to the sanctuary he had built for me. The house, once welcoming, seemed to tighten around me like a protective shell. Outside, the men knocked again, harder this time. A voice deep, measured, tinged with the Canadian lilt I'd sometimes heard when Joshua was tired carried through the door. "Catherine, I'm Robert Mitchell. These are my brothers, Alan and David. We only want to talk about the farm." The word "only" rang false. I looked at the laptop with its silent invitation and then back to the door where shadows shifted under the frosted glass. Whatever secrets Joshua had stored in that machine were meant to guide me now. I drew a steadying breath and turned toward the desk. I lowered the shades and forced myself to breathe. The brothers' voices carried through the wooden door, each knock a dull echo through the great room. I tried to focus on what Joshua would want me to do next. His letter had urged me to trust what you will find. The answer lay with the laptop, not with the men on the porch. I crossed the floor, every creak of the polished boards sounding like a warning. The laptop opened with a soft chime. The login screen appeared. I typed the date of our first meeting, and my maiden name 051519998 Mitchell. Instantly, the desktop bloomed to life. One single folder waited, for Catherine. My hand trembled as I double-clicked. The first file was titled Day 1. Joshua's face filled the screen, younger and healthier than he had been in his last months. His crooked grin, how I missed it, flashed across the room. "Hello, Cat," he said. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've come to Maple Creek. I know how hard this must be, but I built this place for you." Tears blurred my vision. His voice, rich with affection, filled the silent house. "I repurchased the farm I once swore to avoid," he continued, "because I wanted to give you what we always dreamed about: land, horses, and the freedom to create. There's more to tell, but for now, know this. The property is legally yours. I protected every detail. Don't open the door until you feel safe, and don't trust my brothers. They will come." Outside, the knocking grew louder. Joshua's calm warning steadied me. I locked the front latch, switched off the entry lights, and drew the curtains. The house, with its solid timbers and thick stone walls, became my fortress. The laptop pinged again. Another message from Joshua queued itself automatically, a simple line of text: "Check the desk drawer." Inside, I found a heavy blue folder with embossed seals and notarized papers, the deed, mineral rights documents, and letters from lawyers confirming that Maple Creek Farm had been purchased outright and titled solely in my name. Joshua had indeed thought of everything. The pounding on the door finally stopped. I peered through a side window. The 3 men had stepped back, conferring in tight voices. Even from a distance, I could see the family resemblance: Robert with Joshua's broad shoulders but a harder mouth, Alan, sharply dressed, holding a leather portfolio, and David, lean and watchful. Minutes later, flashing lights splashed across the driveway. A Royal Canadian Mounted Police cruiser pulled up. One of the brothers strode forward, a document in hand. I opened the door only when an officer's calm voice called out, "Mrs. Mitchell, RCMP, may we speak?" I stepped outside, the cold prairie air bracing. "I'm Constable Wilson," the officer said, polite but firm. These gentlemen claim a family interest in the property and request inspection. Robert's gaze locked on mine. Our brother purchased this land while mentally unfit. We have reason to believe. I cut him off, my own voice stronger than I expected. My husband was of sound mind. Here are the legal documents proving it. I handed the blue folder to the constable. He studied the notarized deed and bank transfers with professional care, then looked up. This paperwork appears to be in perfect order, he said at last. Turning to the brothers, he added, any further claims will need to be pursued in civil court. There is no cause for forced inspection today. Robert's jaw tightened. Alan muttered something under his breath. David simply watched, his face unreadable. Without another word, they turned back to their SUV, tires crunching sharply on gravel as they left. When their taillights disappeared beyond the gate, I felt a long breath escape, a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The house seemed to exhale with me, the tension in the walls softening. I returned to the laptop, heart still racing. Joshua's next video had already queued itself. He sat in a warmly lit room I didn't yet recognize. If you're watching this, he said, you've just faced my brothers. I'm sorry to put you through that, but I needed you to know the strength I've always seen in you. The farm is yours. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. I closed the laptop gently. Outside, a thin snowfall began to drift, softening the outlines of the maples and the long driveway. For the first time since Joshua's death, a flicker of steadiness replaced the chaos inside me. Night fell quickly over the Canadian hills. I made a simple meal from the supplies stocked in the immaculate kitchen, evidence that Joshua had anticipated every need. Before bed, I walked through the great room one last time. Paintings of horses seemed to watch me with quiet approval. In the silence, I felt Joshua's presence like a steady pulse. I wasn't merely visiting his past. I was standing at the threshold of a future he had built in secret for me. Whatever battles still waited beyond the maple-lined gates, I was no longer afraid. The next morning, the world outside my bedroom window shimmered under a crust of new snow. Pale light spilled across Maple Creek's rolling hills, each maple branch sparkling as if dusted with ground glass. The quiet was deceptive. I knew the Mitchell brothers would not retreat for long. I brewed coffee and sat before the silver laptop. Its soft chime felt almost like a greeting. The next video, labeled Day 2, waited. Joshua appeared in a warmly lit room with shelves of old books and a stone hearth I hadn't yet found. "Morning, Cat," he began, his crooked smile easing the ache inside me. "If you're watching this, it means my brothers have made contact. I'm sorry for that. I left every legal protection in place, but they are relentless men. Remember, you are not alone in this. I've prepared for every angle they might try." He explained more about his diagnosis: hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a genetic heart condition that could strike without warning. "I couldn't bear the thought of you watching me fade," he said quietly. "I wanted our final years to feel normal. Every trip I claimed was for engineering contracts was really a journey here. I rebuilt this farm for you. I paused the video, the coffee cooling untouched. In all our years together, he had never lied outright. Now I realized he had been building truth in secret, truth made of timber and stone, waiting for me to find it. The video continued. Joshua described buying the farm directly from their father when the man was desperate for cash. "I insisted on a proper sale," he said, "with airtight documents. My brothers mocked me for wasting money until last year, when oil was discovered nearby. Now they will try to claim what they once scorned." Outside, a distant crunch of tires broke the morning stillness. I hurried to the window. The black SUV was back, this time accompanied by a second vehicle, sleek and gray. My pulse quickened. A heavy knock shook the front door. "Mrs. Mitchell," a man called, his voice carrying the same clipped Canadian vowels I'd heard the day before. "Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Please open the door." I opened cautiously to find a young officer standing beside the brothers. Snow glittered on his hat brim. Robert stepped forward, a folded document in hand. "This is a court order for an inspection," he said. "We have reason to believe the property transfer is invalid." I met the constable's eyes. "Before you enter," I said steadily, "you should see these." I handed him Joshua's blue folder. He stepped aside to examine the contents while the brothers shifted impatiently. Minutes passed. Then the constable closed the folder with deliberate care. "Everything here is in perfect order," he announced. "This deed is uncontested. There will be no inspection today." A flash of anger hardened Robert's features, but he forced a smile. "We'll pursue this in court." "You're free to try," I said, the calm in my voice surprising even me. "But you will not enter my home today." The brothers retreated in silence. I watched their SUV glide down the drive until the maples swallowed it whole. Only then did I feel the tremor in my knees. Later, exploring the house, I found the room from Joshua's video, a private library with tall windows and an enormous stone fireplace, a perfect hideaway for secrets. On a writing table lay another note in his hand. "Look deeper, Kat. This is only the beginning." That evening, as twilight softened the hills, I sat before the fire and opened the next scheduled video. Joshua's image flickered onto the screen, his eyes steady and knowing. "You did well today," he said as if he'd witnessed everything. "They will not give up, but neither will you. Remember, I built this place for more than beauty. Keep exploring." I closed the laptop and listened to the wind press softly against the house. Somewhere out in the dark, I imagined 3 men fuming over their failed attempt. Yet instead of fear, I felt an unfamiliar clarity. Joshua had believed I could guard his final gift. Now I believed it too. Morning sunlight streamed across the great room, gilding the paintings of galloping horses. The house smelled faintly of cedar and coffee, a scent that had already begun to feel like my own. But I woke with the uneasy knowledge that yesterday's standoff was only a pause. The Mitchell brothers would return. I turned to the next video file, day 3. Joshua's face filled the screen, calm and alive. "Good morning, Kat. By now you've met the brothers and seen the paperwork hold, but this place still holds gifts you haven't found. There's a room designed only for you. Start with the east wing, last door on the right. The key is in the antique silver bedside table." I pressed pause and hurried upstairs. The east wing smelled faintly of lemon polish, as if someone had been cleaning only yesterday. In the top drawer of the silver table lay a small brass key. It fit perfectly into the lock of a door I'd barely noticed. When I pushed it open, I gasped. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows onto a fully equipped art studio. Tall easels waited, canvases stacked like silent invitations, and shelves crowded with professional paints and brushes. Against the far wall rested a flat archival box. Inside were dozens of my old paintings, college work I'd assumed lost to time and moving trucks. On top lay my senior self-portrait, a young woman gazing toward the future with fearless eyes. Joshua's voice resumed through the laptop I'd carried with me. "You gave up so much to raise our daughter and build our life. I always promised myself I'd give your art back to you. This room is your promise kept." I traced the lines of my long-ago brushstrokes, tears blurring the colors. Joshua hadn't merely restored a farm, he had restored a part of me I'd buried. The ringing of my phone shattered the reverie. Jenna's name flashed on the screen. "Mom," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and confusion. "I just got a call from someone named Robert Mitchell. He says he's Dad's brother and that I should come to Canada. He sounded nice." My heart tightened. "Sweetheart, please don't meet them until we talk. There's more to this story than they'll tell you." But she was already caught in their orbit. "Mom, they said Dad hid a lot from us. Don't you think I deserve to hear their side?" I begged for patience, but Jenna promised only, "We'll talk when I arrive," before ending the call. Hours later, tires crunched on the driveway. I looked out to see Jenna's familiar red hatchback behind the black SUV. She stepped out, tall and confident in a navy coat, her dark hair shining in the late afternoon Sunday. Behind her, Robert, Alan, and David emerged with practiced calm. "Mom," Jenna called, hurrying up the steps. "This place is incredible. Why didn't Dad ever tell us?" Before I could answer, Robert offered a polite smile. "Catherine, I believe we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. We only want a conversation." Inside, we sat around the great room's stone hearth. Robert spoke smoothly about family heritage, claiming the farm had always been meant for all the brothers. Alan opened a leather portfolio and slid out a document. "A simple, fair division," he explained. "1/3 to you, 1/3 to Jenna, and 1/3 shared among us." I let their words settle like dust. They described oil leases, future wealth, the importance of keeping the family intact. Jenna listened, brow furrowed but intrigued. "It sounds reasonable," she said at last. "Maybe Dad just misunderstood their intentions." I met her eyes. Or maybe he understood them perfectly. "Jenna, your father planned every inch of this property for us, not as a business deal but as a legacy. He warned me this might happen." Robert's charming tone tightened. "We're not here to fight. We're here to give everyone their rightful share." "Rights," I said quietly, "are established by law and by love." Joshua made his choice clear. For a long moment, the room held only the crackle of the fire. Then Robert stood. "Think about our proposal," he said, smoothing his coat. "Family should not be at war." They left as gracefully as they had entered, promising to return with formal papers. Jenna lingered, torn between loyalty and the curiosity that had always driven her. I reached for her hand. "Sweetheart, there's more you need to see on the laptop. Tomorrow." That night, long after she had gone to her room, I replayed Joshua's message. His voice was steady, prophetic. "They will try to divide you and Jenna. Do not let them. There is a deeper truth waiting beneath this house. Follow Ellis. He will know where to begin." I closed the computer, the weight of both love and impending battle pressing in. Tomorrow, I would find Ellis and begin the search Joshua had mapped out. Somewhere below these floors, answers waited. At first light, the maples dripped silver in the thaw, each branch beaded with tiny drops like 1,000 watchful eyes. I carried Joshua's laptop to the kitchen, brewed a pot of dark coffee, and opened the next cued video. His familiar face appeared, calm and alert. "Good morning, Kat. By now you've faced my brothers and heard their proposal. Don't be swayed. There's more to Maple Creek than they can guess. Ellis will help you find what lies beneath." As if on cue, a gentle knock sounded on the mudroom door. I found Ellis broad-shouldered, gray-haired, with kind, steady eyes waiting in the frosty dawn. Joshua had mentioned him only briefly over the years as a farm contact, nothing more. Now I understood he was much more. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said with quiet respect, "Joshua asked me to guide you when the time came." We sat at the pine kitchen table while I explained the brothers' visit and Jenna's wavering trust. Ellis listened without interruption, then nodded. "Your husband anticipated all of this. He left something for you to see." He led me outside to the stables, where 6 magnificent horses shifted and snorted in their stalls. Midnight, a striking black Frisian, tossed his head as if greeting an old friend. "Joshua chose each one with you in mind," Ellis said softly. "But what you need to see is beyond the barn." Behind the last stall lay an older outbuilding, its weathered boards untouched by the recent renovations. Inside smelled of hay and cool earth. Ellis moved several bales aside, revealing a square trapdoor set into the dirt floor. He produced a heavy iron key and opened it to a set of wooden steps descending into darkness. My heart beat faster as we climbed down. Fluorescent lights flickered on, illuminating a concrete tunnel lined with steel shelves. The air smelled of cool stone and machine oil. At the tunnel's end stood a reinforced door. Ellis entered a code and swung it open. The space beyond felt like stepping into a hidden chapter of Joshua's mind. Maps covered the walls, marked with layers of red and blue ink. Filing cabinets overflowed with geological surveys and financial records. A long desk held 2 monitors and a high-speed scanner. In the center, an Alberta mineral rights chart glowed on a backlit drafting table. "Joshua called this his war room," Ellis explained. "He built it after the brothers first sniffed around last year. This is where he planned every move." I studied the massive property map. A section on the western hills, rocky and seemingly barren, was circled in bold red. Notes in Joshua's careful handwriting documented deep oil reserves far richer than the eastern fields everyone else coveted. I understood instantly. The Mitchell brothers had deliberately excluded that land from their proposal, believing it worthless. Ellis opened a locked cabinet and withdrew a thick folder. "Here's the real surprise. Your husband collected proof of decades of financial fraud, tax evasion, insider trading, forged signatures. Enough to end their careers if exposed. He said this was your shield if they ever threatened you or Jenna." I leafed through the evidence, signed affidavits, bank transfers, even private emails. Joshua had built a fortress of facts. Tears pricked my eyes as I thought of the countless hours he had spent here, ill and pressed for time, yet methodically preparing a defense I hadn't known I'd need. Back in the kitchen, Ellis poured fresh coffee while we mapped next steps. "The brothers will try again," he said, "and they'll target Jenna. She's their easiest way in." I thought of my daughter, brilliant, impulsive, still grieving. "I need to reach her before they do," I said. Joshua's next video confirmed it. "Cat," he said, eyes intent as if he'd foreseen this exact morning. "When they come for Jenna, remind her who she is and who we are. Show her the truth. Don't let them divide you." As dusk fell, I felt both heavier and stronger. I had moved from shock to strategy, from widowhood to command. Joshua had trusted me to guard not just land but legacy. I would not fail him. By morning, a hard blue sky arched over Maple Creek Farm. Frost glazed the meadows like fine glass, each blade of grass a shard of light. I barely tasted breakfast. My thoughts were with Jenna. Last night's video from Joshua echoed in my mind. "Show her the truth. Don't let them divide you." I called as soon as the sun cleared the hills. "Sweetheart, can we meet somewhere away from the farm and your uncle's? Just the two of us." Her voice held a trace of defiance. "Why? They just want a fair solution. Maybe you're overreacting." "I'll explain everything in person," I said. "Please." We agreed on a neutral cafe in town. I drove the 20 miles with the blue folder of legal documents on the passenger seat and a tablet loaded with Joshua's private videos. The prairie stretched silent and endless, as if listening. Jenna arrived late, her dark hair pulled back in a brisk ponytail. She folded her arms, defensive but curious. "I can only stay a few minutes. Uncle Robert wants to introduce me to their attorney this afternoon." I slid the tablet across the table. "Before you do that, hear from Dad himself." I opened a file Joshua had titled, "For Jenna When She Needs It." His face filled the screen, healthy, confident, with that crooked grin she had inherited. "My brilliant girl," he said gently. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And you're probably angry about secrets I kept. I wish I'd told you about my illness, but I wanted our last years to feel normal. I also need you to know the truth about my brothers. When I was 19, they used my name to siphon our father's estate and threatened to frame me if I spoke. That's why I left Canada and changed my name slightly. They haven't changed. Whatever they tell you, remember this. They'll use anyone, including you, to get what they want." Jenna's breath caught. She stared at the screen, eyes glistening, until the video ended. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, barely above a whisper, "They lied to me. They're counting on your grief," I said softly. "On your wish to connect with Dad through them. But the family connection they promise isn't real. It's a lever." Tears streaked her cheeks. All this time, I thought he didn't trust us enough to share the farm. But he was protecting us. I reached across the table, squeezing her cold hands. "He loved you beyond measure. That's the whole truth." A long silence settled. Then Jenna straightened, her expression hardening with a resolve that mirrored her father's. "What's the plan?" Relief and fierce pride surged through me. I opened the blue folder and spread Joshua's geological maps across the table. First, we secure independent legal counsel one Joshua himself recommended. Then we meet Western Plains Energy, the oil company that's already expressed interest. The brothers think only the eastern fields matter. They have no idea the richest deposit lies beneath the western hills they dismissed as worthless. Jenna studied the maps, her green eyes sharp. "We know something they don't. That's leverage." "Exactly," I said. "And leverage is power." Back at the farmhouse, we called Joshua's trusted Minnesota lawyer, who referred us to a sharp Alberta attorney ready to act quickly. Then I queued up the next of Joshua's videos. He appeared in the great room, sunlight in his hair. "If Jenna has joined you," he said with quiet satisfaction, "you're stronger than ever. Don't let my brothers frame the narrative. Set the terms. They expect a grieving widow and a confused daughter. Show them the Mitchell women they've underestimated." Jenna wiped her eyes and laughed, a sound bright and defiant. He knew us better than we know ourselves. By late evening, our plan was set. An early morning consultation with the attorney, then a discreet meeting with Western Plains Energy. I locked the blue folder back in Joshua's hidden war room and secured every door and window. Standing with Jenna on the farmhouse porch, under a sweep of winter stars, I felt Joshua's presence as vividly as the cold air on my skin. He had given us a map for the future, and together we would follow it. The next morning, Maple Creek Farm shimmered under a brittle blue sky. A fine crust of frost coated the maples like sugar. Jenna and I dressed in quiet, resolved me in a charcoal suit I hadn't worn since teaching conferences, her in a tailored navy dress with her father's old watch snug on her wrist. We looked less like mourners now, and more like what Joshua had always believed we were, a team ready for battle. By mid-morning we sat in the polished offices of Harper & Lowe, the Alberta law firm Joshua had prearranged. Mr. Lowe, a lean man with a deliberate way of speaking, listened as we described the brothers' visits and displayed the war room's documents. When we unfolded Joshua's secret geological surveys, his eyebrows lifted. "This is exhaustive," he said with admiration. "Your husband prepared for every conceivable challenge. You hold the stronger hand." Armed with legal advice and formal notices ready to file, we drove straight to a quiet meeting with Western Plains Energy. The company's CEO, Thomas Reeves, greeted us in a glass-walled conference room. He studied the survey of the so-called worthless Western acres and gave a low whistle. "These findings change everything," he said. "If your family consents, we can negotiate on terms that prioritize environmental safeguards and a steady royalty stream. No need to sell outright." Exactly what Joshua would have wanted. That night, back at the farmhouse, we shared a simple supper and cued the next video. Joshua's face glowed on the screen, half in shadow, as though speaking from the very heart of the house. "If my brothers are still pressing," he said, "remember, they'll try charm first, pressure second, and intimidation last. But never forget truth and preparation outlast every tactic. Appearances matter. Meet them as equals, not as prey." 3 days later, the black SUV returned punctual, as if keeping a business appointment. This time, another vehicle followed, a silver sedan with Northern Extraction's logo barely visible on the door. From the window, I watched Robert step out flanked by Alan and David, then a silver-haired stranger in an impeccable suit. Jenna and I were ready. The dining room had been staged with quiet precision. Polished oak table, water carafes, and a hidden screen ready to descend. Ellis ushered the men in with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Mitchell, Miss Jenna," Robert said smoothly. "This is Harrison Wells, CEO of Northern Extraction. We hope today we can settle everything amicably." I smiled and gestured to the prepared seats. "Let's begin." Robert launched into his practice speech about family heritage and fair division, proposing again to carve the estate into thirds. Harrison Wells added a few market forecasts to emphasize urgency. I listened, silent and composed. When Robert finished, I clicked a small remote. The hidden screen descended with a soft mechanical sigh. "Before we discuss divisions," I said, "let's look at the whole property." The lights dimmed automatically. A high-resolution survey map filled the screen. 2,200 acres of Maple Creek, not the smaller parcel the brothers had presented. Another click overlaid red geological notations showing the deep, untapped oil beneath the western hills. For the first time, Robert faltered. Alan's pen froze mid-note. Even the seasoned oil executive leaned forward. "According to independent surveys," I continued, "the primary oil reserves lie in the western sector you omitted from your proposal. I imagine Mr. Wells might like to revise his projections." Silence. Then the connecting door opened, and Thomas Reeves of Western Plains Energy entered, accompanied by our attorney and a neutral notary. "Mrs. Mitchell invited us," Reeves said, nodding politely to Wells. "We're here to ensure transparent negotiations." Color drained from Robert's face. Alan muttered, "This is highly irregular." "It's perfectly legal," our lawyer said calmly. "Mrs. Mitchell is the sole owner. She may entertain any offers she chooses." Jenna straightened, her voice clear. "And before anyone speaks of family obligations, perhaps we should address the evidence of past financial fraud that my father documented." She nodded to our attorney, who slid sealed packets across the table. "Copies of bank transfers, forged signatures, and sworn statements all tied to your companies." The room seemed to contract, thick with shock. Harrison Wells stood abruptly. I will withdraw until these matters are clarified. Northern extraction will not proceed under false pretenses. Robert's mask of charm collapsed. What do you want from us? He demanded. Nothing, I replied, except that you cease every claim on Maple Creek Farm and end your manipulation of my daughter. Sign these withdrawal agreements, and we all move on. They signed, one by one, pens scratched like reluctant confessions. When the brothers left, their once confident stride reduced to stiff formality. A profound stillness settled over the farmhouse. Jenna released a shaky breath, then smiled triumphant and tearful all at once. Mom, she whispered, we did it. Dad would be so proud. Outside, the maple branches glittered in the late sun, like banners of quiet victory. Inside, I felt Joshua's presence more vividly than ever, not as a memory, but as the architect of a triumph we had claimed together. 2 dawns after our dramatic meeting, the prairie air felt different, lighter, as if Maple Creek itself had exhaled. I woke to a house at peace. No more black SUVs at the gate, no unexpected phone calls. Only winter sunlight spilling across the great room and the quiet hum of horses in the paddock. Jenna joined me for coffee, her father's watch gleaming on her wrist. We sat in companionable silence until she finally spoke. It still feels unreal, Mom. 3 days ago they were so sure they could take everything. Now they're gone. Gone for now, I said gently. But Joshua planned for every possibility, and we have the signed settlement and legal injunction ready if they even think about circling back. Later that morning, we met again with our lawyer and Thomas Reeves of Western Plains Energy. At the big oak table in the farmhouse dining room, we shaped a contract unlike any the oil industry usually entertained. Instead of a quick payout, we negotiated for phased extraction, strict environmental oversight, and a permanent restoration trust. Reeves signed with a look of something like respect. Your husband told me, before he passed, that his wife would insist on a responsible deal, he admitted. He wasn't exaggerating. That evening, with all documents sealed and filed, Jenna and I sat in the art studio as snow began to fall. I finally set brush to the massive blank canvas Joshua had left behind. The first confident strokes formed a landscape of memory and promise. Golden meadows layered with the deep red of Alberta earth, and, on the horizon, the silhouette of a horse in full gallop, a tribute to freedom and to Joshua himself. Winter passed in a slow, luminous rhythm. Each morning brought a new video from Joshua, sometimes a practical reminder about farm upkeep, other times a gentle meditation on love and legacy. We made them part of breakfast, laughing or weeping as the day required. When spring arrived, Maple Creek transformed. Pale green shoots broke through the melting snow, and the western hills softened under a veil of mist. I finished the great canvas and hung it in the main room where sunlight poured through cathedral windows. Jenna stood beside me, her hand warm in mine. It feels like he's still guiding us, she said. Weeks later, a final video appeared in the queue. For the day you no longer need my voice. Joshua sat in the same great room, eyes calm and shining. If you're watching this, Kat, it means you and Jenna have found your rhythm. I don't want to be just a voice from the past. I want you to keep building, keep loving, keep creating. The farm was never about oil or even horses. It was about giving you room to become everything you are meant to be. The screen faded to black. For a long time I stayed there, hands folded, letting his last words settle like seeds. Months rolled forward. Jenna returned to her career in Minneapolis but visited often, sometimes bringing friends to ride under the endless Alberta sky. The oil project proceeded under our strict environmental guidelines, funding scholarships in Joshua's name and ensuring the farm's financial future. My own life blossomed with color and paint, exhibitions slowly taking shape from the studio he had imagined for me. Each season I discovered fresh layers of Joshua's love, a hidden trail marked with tiny brass horseshoes for Jenna to find with future children. A secret alcove in the stable, holding letters of encouragement for my birthdays to come. He had left a living map of devotion, one that stretched well beyond the span of his life. Standing on the porch, one bright summer evening, I looked out over the western hills. The sun turned the fields to molten gold. For the first time since his death, I whispered not goodbye but thank you for the farm, for the strength he believed in, and for a legacy built not on blood or obligation, but on love, freely given and fiercely protected. Joshua's story had begun with a forbidden farm. Mine would continue with an open gate. Summer at Maple Creek arrived with a slow, golden splendor. Wildflowers spangled the meadows, and the horses moved like living brushstrokes across endless green. From the great room's windows, I watched Jenna canter on midnight, her laughter carrying all the way to the porch. The once forbidden farm now pulsed with ordinary joys, breakfasts of warm bread and berries, long evenings sketching while the light lingered late. One morning, a notification blinked on the silver laptop. Final video. My heart tightened as I pressed play. Joshua's face filled the screen, smiling with a quiet radiance. "My love," he said softly, "if you are watching this, a full year has passed since I left. I hope the seasons have given you healing, that you've painted, laughed, maybe even argued with Jenna and made up again. I hope you've discovered the life beyond loss that I always believed you would." His voice deepened with gentle urgency. "Remember, Maple Creek isn't meant to hold you back. It's a springboard. Use it to create, to give, to love. If someone finds their way into your heart again, don't shut the door out of loyalty to me. Loving someone new will never erase what we had. It will honor it." I covered my mouth, tears spilling freely. Even here, in his final words, Joshua was freeing me. Weeks passed. I painted late into warm twilights, sometimes joined by Ellis, who told stories of Joshua's quiet kindness, how he had given Ellis, an ex-convict, a second chance without asking for details. "He said everyone deserves a clean canvas," Ellis recalled with a smile. The phrase stayed with me. In early autumn, Jenna visited with news of a promotion. "I'm buying a little condo downtown," she said, her eyes bright. "But I'll always have a room here." She looked around the great room where my newest painting, a sweeping view of the western hills at dawn, glowed in the afternoon Sunday. "Dad would love this," she added softly. "I think he does," I replied. That evening, we saddled the horses and rode to the highest ridge. From there, the whole farm unfurled beneath a sky of molten copper. Jenna reached for my hand. "Mom, we kept his dream alive." "Yes," I said, feeling Joshua's presence in the quiet vastness, "and now it's ours." As the first stars emerged, a peace deeper than triumph settled over me. We had defended Joshua's gift, uncovered hidden truths, and built a life that carried his love forward. Maple Creek was no longer the forbidden farm of whispered warnings. It had become a living testament to resilience, artistry, and a love that refused to end with death. I breathed in the crisp night air and whispered to the darkening hills, "Until tomorrow, my love." And for the first time, those words felt less like farewell and more like a promise to keep creating, to keep loving, to keep living.